Okay, so just a very brief recap on what we learnt in the last video, lesson 9. We did look at this picture here, where we introduced lots of things on here, and again we started off the whole of the lesson talking about dry bond, where we lay out the bricks just below ground level to make sure that we highlight any of the problems that we're going to have. We talked about hole bond, and that again was where we start with a stretcher, the bricks go all the way through and finish off with another stretcher. Invariably we said that that isn't always the case, so sometimes we have to go to reverse bond, and if reverse bond doesn't work, then the final option then is a broken bond. And what we start to go into, which we will continue to do now, is to emphasize the fact that a broken bond is rather unsightly, can be unsightly, and the skill of the bricklayer comes into where we can hide it in the best place. And if it doesn't have an internal corner where it can be hidden, and it has to be placed under a window or the sides of reveals, then again we have to look at ways in which we can disguise it the best way we can. We also talked about the zips that occur, and in this example here again we just mentioned about the 2/1, which looks much better. We also talked about the reveal bricks, where they are marked out on the substructure when the first course is being laid out, and then these ones should be plumbed up. What wasn't mentioned in the video though is the reason we plumb these ones up is so that when the window is positioned, all of a sudden the joints, which I've seen in a few cases, suddenly jump over to accommodate the window, because these haven't been sort of maintained in an upright position. So this just makes sure that these joints all run up. And this is what a bricklayer is always looking for, that his joints are all plumb. So again, plumb up the reveals just means you don't get that sudden shift when you put the window on. So that's the importance of that. We then talked about balanced brickwork, and if we just emphasize again, balanced brickwork just means that we have the same cuts or bricks either side of the opening. Okay, we're going to now look at this and where this originated from as we go through this video as well. So if we start from the beginning again, and we're looking at, we'll just move this down, a wall here that is brick size, hole bond, and the opening size is brick size as well. So just want to emphasize what this looks like. Again, we've got the brickwork chased out on the substructure, and when it's hole bond and the wall is hole bond as well, then the result is exactly what we're looking for. We want our brickwork to look like this, where we have hole bond, there's no cuts, the opening is brick size, so again everything works in nicely, and again because it's hole bond, the window's positioned so we have balanced brickwork as well. So every box is ticked in this case, but unfortunately this doesn't always happen. So again, if we just go to the second one, if hole bond doesn't work, when we're setting out, we can see in this one we've got a wall that's brick size but in reverse bond, and then we have an opening that is brick size. Now this one is a little bit interesting because we have reverse bond, stretcher, they run all the way through whole bricks until we get to this end, and we have a header. Now I will keep this one here as I just bring in what goes on top of that. So what we have is another wall that looks good because there are no cuts. The brickwork runs through whole, and again pleasing to the eye. There is something here that again we're going to go into now, because this wasn't the case long ago. I see this, and I've done this myself many times. In stretcher bond, this is fine. But the one thing we don't have, which we did on the previous picture, was we don't have balanced brickwork on the opening. We can see here we have a stretcher, but on the other side we have a header. Now again, when the lintel goes across, if there's soldiers there or an arch going across there or anything like that, then the brickwork that goes above that will revert back to hull bond again. So again, it looks good, it's all acceptable. But years ago this didn't happen. And the reason it didn't happen is because, if we get rid of this, I'm going to bring in this isometric sketch that I did just to explain. Years ago, when they had arches, what they would have would be a bonded arch in many cases. So the brickwork, as brickwork went up, when it came to the arch had to be bonded to the brickwork. So we didn't get like a straight joint one side or the other. So both sides had to be the same. So this meant that any broken bonds in the wall would have been put in the window walls. Now if I just explain my terminology for window walls and window piers, if there's a wall that has, let me just draw this a bit firmer, 2 windows, not very well drawn. If the brickwork in between is 4 bricks or more, I term that as a window wall. If it's less than 4 bricks, these are termed as window piers. Okay, so just so you understand that terminology now. So again, if there was an open here, a window along here, this window wall or window pier would have the broken bond to make sure that the brickwork opening was balanced. Okay, we'll look at a few pictures now where we can see this actually in place on some Flemish bond walls, and again, hopefully you can understand what we've just been talking about. So after seeing those photographs, we can see where the relevance of the balanced brickwork did come into effect. So if you just go back to the last wall that we looked at, where again we highlighted the fact here that we were in reverse bond, everything looked good, but we didn't have the balanced brickwork. Now if we look at this, taking into consideration what we've learnt and what we've seen in the arch and the 3 photographs we looked at, we have the same size wall, but this time we've changed the bottom to be, rather than reverse bond, we can see we've got a stretcher and a stretcher, which we know the wall didn't work out, so we have a broken bond in the centre. But this has given us what we saw, especially in the stretcher bond photograph we saw. We did see this zip in effect, or having to be put in. but again it did leave us with balanced brickwork across the opening. Again, I've shown this as it was in the photograph, but we have learnt from what we have been doing that we can get rid of this header. Now again, haven't shown this on here, but we will see this in one or two photographs in the next video, where this header could be made into a 3/4. So we would have 3 cuts there, so that we would have then 3/2, which again would take our eye off the quarter bond zip that we have in there. So hopefully we're now starting to understand in a bit more detail the problems that we have with broken bonds and reverse bonds, and now that we're thinking about balanced brickwork as well, again hopefully we're going to be looking at this and the next video with a little bit more knowledge on how to get over these problems.